Okay, recording in progress. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin. It's Saturday, April 9th. It's still chilly here in New Jersey, so I'm wearing, since we're doing an improv Springsteen chat, I'm wearing my Asbury Park sweatshirt that Springsteen helped, and in your honor, too. So I'll do a little, we're doing an improv chat on Bruce Springsteen, and this was born out of talking to CJ, actually interviewing him, and I'll quickly introduce CJ and John. But a month ago, we discovered we both like Bruce Springsteen, and of course, CJ mentioned John, who is a professor, a screenwriter who also loves Springsteen. So CJ, turned on a light bulb, a bright bulb, not a dim bulb. And the light bulb was, why don't we get together and just talk about Bruce? And what's really interesting about this improv chat is each of us will bring something really uniquely different perspectives. And my perspective, my bio is I live about 3 miles away from Bruce Springsteen. So for the 11 years that I've been a journalist in covering music, also in Asbury Park, I quote bumped into Bruce a number of times and people in his world. And so I have a whole slew of anecdotal things about Bruce, but it's my perspective, and it's kind of cute, some cute stuff. So that's me. I'm a journalist. I do Conversations with Calvin, and next I'm going to introduce CJ Julianus, and then John Philbin. CJ, I interviewed CJ and his wife Lorrisa because they had just finished a movie, the Misadventures of Mistress Maneater. And then we'll get to John, and he can talk about his feature-length film that he did in addition to being a professor, Live and Die in Dixie. So I'm done with my Carson monologue.
Hey, everybody, I'm CJ Julianus, filmmaker and Bruce Springsteen fan, and I have a long history of admiring his work and following him from the mid-70s all the way through to today. And I hope I have some anecdotal type things to share that resonate with folks.
John.
Okay, and I'm John Harper Philbin. I was a film professor at Grand Valley State University in Michigan for 20 plus years, recently retired. I'm a big Bruce fan. I've seen him in concert many times. In fact, I'm going to highlight 3 different ones to show you the full range of Springsteen glory. I currently have a feature film out called Driftless, which is about state park rangers on the 4th of July weekend when the state government shut down, closes the park, and creates all this sort of tension. And that's currently available on Tubi and Prime and IMDb TV and Apple TV and so on. I'll put a link in the bottom of the bio here for this particular podcast. And then the other one I did earlier about 10 years ago is called To Live and Die in Dixie, which is harder to find, but I'll put the link for that as well at the bottom. But why we bring that one up is because that was the one that Bruce Springsteen loaned me the opening title music for that film.
Wow, that's huge.
And I've seen John's films, and they're very well done. So please watch his films.
Yes, and okay. For sure send me those links, because A, I want to watch it, and B, we'll kind of put it so folks can track it down. Can you kind of go back and have Bruce lent you music for that film?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to make this short-ish, but basically, so I was cutting the film. I had laid in the song, his Rising album called The Fuse, and I was cutting to it. I was cutting the opening title sequence, the opening, sort of the first 5 minutes of the movie, because I wanted it to be sort of a montage, and I was cutting to it, and I thought, boy, this music is perfect. But yeah, we could never get a Bruce Springsteen song, but yeah, why not? Why not ask? So I reached out to his agent, which is Landau Management, which is in New England. And they said, well, send us a fax with your, so I thought, okay, sure. So I faxed him a request, told him, this is sort of a low budget indie project. It's not like Spielberg and is going to make millions or whatever. And then I waited, and then I didn't hear anything. This is like November. And then in December, I called him back and I said, did you get my fax? I said, yeah, we got your fax. But Bruce is on tour right now. So we haven't been able to get back to you. And I thought, well, Bruce doesn't have assistants who would approve it.
Right.
Who cares that he's on tour? I mean, what does that have to do with it? And then this was the surprising thing. They said, no, he likes to approve these things himself.
Wow.
It's like, wow, he must get a lot of stuff. So anyway, so I said, well, he's going to be on tour till next summer. In fact, I have tickets down the road to see him. And I can't wait that long. I'm in the middle of editing. And they said, well, he takes a break around Christmas, so I'm sure he'll get to it then. Okay. So I thought, that's fine. I'll keep editing, and maybe in January I'll call back, or they'll call me back. So Christmas comes and goes, January comes around, still haven't heard from them.
Oh, Lord.
I'm in the phases of editing this. I need either to swap out a new piece of music and change the cut or something. So anyway, so I call them back. I say, it's me again with the thing. And they said, oh yeah, he's approved it. Of course, I was thinking, well, thanks for the phone call.
You're right.
And I said, great. And I said, well, how much would it cost to license it? And they said, well, we'll do it gratis, given this is a low budget film.
Wow.
But keep in mind, we're only giving you the rights to the song. So if you want to re-record the song with your own band, you have the rights to do that. If you want Bruce Springsteen's recording, you'll have to get the recording rights from Sony Entertainment. And I was like, well, of course I want Bruce's version of it. I don't want to record my own. So I said, well, what's their number? So they were in LA. So, okay, thank you. So I call Sony Entertainment. I get a lawyer on the phone. I tell him my whole deal, independent filmmaker, want to use this Bruce Springsteen song. And first thing he says, well, first you need the rights to the song. And I said, I got those. He was like, huh? I go, I've already talked to Bruce's people. I've got the rights to the song. He said, oh, well, good for you. Okay. So you want the recording? All right, well, we can do that. How does $2,000 sound? And I said, well, Bruce gave it to us gratis. And he went, okay, how about $200? And I went, deal. So I got Bruce Springsteen as the opening track of my first feature film for $200. That's
a bargain.
That's a great story. CJ, how did the world of Bruce come into you?
Well, I've been a fan of Bruce since I remember when Time and Newsweek had him on the covers at the same time, and when that came out, and I was like, who is this guy? And I went out and I bought Born to Run, and I just remember very distinctly as a kid, I put the disc on my dad's big stereo system, with the giant speakers or whatever, and I sat on the couch and I opened the jacket and I started reading the lyrics that were on the inside of that jacket. And, I dropped the needle and I turned it up really loud and I listened to it. And the first time I listened to it, it was good. And the second time I listened to it, it was fantastic. And, it basically changed my opinion of popular music at the time, because prior to that, I was a kid. I was listening to Kiss and, Aerosmith and that kind of stuff. That was it was good rock music, but it was kind of like mindless. And listening to Bruce with the emphasis on the lyrics and the poetry and the heart that it was included in that was a game changer for me as a person. And then just based on becoming very, very enamored with that, I've started following him and the transitions that he made with his musics and his narratives and the things that mattered to him. This is a very common story. It mirrored my life,
Wow.
Yeah, troubles with his father, taking on social issues, trying to make the world a better place, and speaking to his truth. And so it's been a long journey of following him, and I just admire the guy. If I ever met the guy, I would probably be a babbling idiot, because what do you say to your idols, you know, without sounding like a moron, you know? Anyway, I just have, he's been a beacon for me in, as far as truth telling, as far as ethics and morality, even politics. The way he goes about his business and the way he does things is altruistic and admirable. So,
Yeah. You know, you mentioned Born to Run. I started this off by saying my connections to Bruce is geographical, because I live down the road from Bruce, and yes, I've bumped into him many times. Without getting too specific, you know, I saw him 3 times a week for 2 years.
yeah, you were saying at your fitness center. Or
Yeah,
something.
my fitness center, we were on the same schedule. First time I went to work out a few years ago, I was on this little abductor machine, and I had my whole 20 different exercises to do, and this is my first time there, and I'm doing the thing, and sometimes you kind of just look around. You're in the gym, you look around at the scenery, and on the machine next to me, like 2 feet away, and I wish there was somebody to film this, because it's so surreal. I just happened to turn my head, and there's Bruce.
You know what I'm visualizing, Calvin? You ever see the cartoons where the eyes like shoot out of the sockets and then slam back in?
Yeah. But I mean, I wanted to be really cool. And I also knew that when you're in a gym, you're in your own world, and that's got to be respected. And I respected it. And like I said, we were on the same schedule, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I had a hard code rule. I would never engage in conversation, and I like to talk. But after the first year, he was walking. It was right before Christmas. He was walking out, and I said, "Hey, Bruce, Merry Christmas." And he said, "Merry Christmas" to me. And then one time, actually, it was his fault. I literally engaged him because I had a new trainer, and he knew the trainer, and he saw me walking with her to a machine, and he goes like that to me. So I go like that to him, and then she put me on the machine, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and he comes over to talk to her, and then the thought occurred to me, in a legal kind of way, he just infringed on my space, so all the bets are off. And he
Now
was there for a minute or two, and he started to leave, and I said, "What the hell?" I said, "Hey, Bruce, don't leave, wait." And I said, I read your autobiography, and I loved it. And there was a half a chapter. There's a half chapter devoted to your favorite horse in the world that you have with you on your farm. And I said, the horse's name is Cal. He said, "Yeah, that's right." I said, "Well, that's my name." And he got hysterical laughing. We shook hands, and it was very nice. It was warm. It was very nice. Anyway, that's so. What else do we want to?
Well, let me jump on the Born to Run thing. So I was in high school and heard Born to Run, and it is kind of a big. I wasn't really aware of the first 2 albums particularly, but then Born to Run, everybody knew about Born to Run.
Right.
And, I kind of thought, these are good songs. His voice is a little gruff, I guess you could say that about a Rod Stewart too, but I mean, compared to Paul McCartney and sort of these guys, he had that growl to his voice. But anyway, so then I go to college, and then there was not really a follow-up for a couple of years to that album. And you kind of were, well, where's Springsteen? Is he ever going to put out another album? And he had some legal issues or whatever. And then I was at University of Iowa, and finally he hits with Darkness on the Edge of Town, and he's going to go on tour with it. And he came to University of Iowa's Hansher Auditorium, which is just a college auditorium that they do plays in or whatnot. And I thought, let's go, a tiny venue compared to the stadiums he plays in now. Yeah. And it was $8.50 in 1978, which is a little cheaper than what he charges now. And one of my memories from it, besides the fact it was just, just nonstop 3 hour, show, was that he had a super long guitar chord, and he would wander out into the audience and up the aisle as he played his solos, and people are kind of touching him, and he's stretching the guitar chord as far as it'll go until he runs back up on stage. And I thought, well, that's cool. This guy is not afraid to get amongst the people or whatever. And just to jump ahead, like 15 years from there, I saw him at Wrigley Field in Chicago. And I was on the field, and it was started to rain, and you got no protection.
Were you at that concert? I was at that concert too.
Wow. Where it started to rain?
Yeah, it poured on us about 2/3 of the way through. I was in the VIP section. I was maybe 15 feet from the stage with my daughter, and that was quite the night.
Well, what kills me about it is so we're out there getting wet, and where people are putting on their parkas, and what are you going to do? There's nowhere to go.
Right.
And he's still playing. He has a little stage which has got a little roof over it, and at some point he wanders out into the rain with his guitar. Like, if you people, so he said something like, "You Chicagoans are hardcore, man. If you can handle it, so can I." And he comes out and he's playing, and of course everyone's gathering around him like, this is so great. And he's getting wet, and at some point, his hands are wet, and so he's playing the electric guitar, and you start to see he's cutting his fingertips a little bit on the strings because they're so wet. At one point he waves to little Stevie, who's still up on stage, like, "Hey, Steve, come on out." And you can see Steve is like, "Oh, Rose, no, please,
Really?
please don't make me do this." And so they gave Steve a big Cubs cap, and he wandered out with Bruce because he's going to be his loyal, right-hand man. And the two of them came out in the rain with the audience. And if there's anything that endears you to your hero, is that he's like, if you guys are going to stand there and be wet while I play, I'm going to come out and be wet with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a cool move.
It is cool.
You brought up Darkness on the Edge of Town. I remember distinctly, because back then getting information was really hard. There was no internet. There was no nothing. You'd rely on, reading like Rolling Stone or Crawdaddy or any of those stupid magazines that were out back then. And I was like, when is he coming out with another album? Because it was a couple of years. I mean, I think Born to Run came out in 75 and Darkness was like 78. It was a long time. And I remember very distinctly, I worked at a place called Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg, Illinois. It's the world's biggest, most popular mall. And right down from where I worked was a place called Disc Records. And I would go there every time I worked on my break. I'd walk down to Disc Records. And just out of the blue, no fanfare, no publicity, no nothing, was a display with a poster or a billboard or whatever of that cover of Darkness. And it was just like, he just let it appear. He didn't want to do, it was very clear that he didn't want to do any marketing or anything like that. And of course I bought the thing immediately. And I was struck at the stark difference in the production between Born to Run and Darkness, because Born to Run was a very highly orchestrated, highly layered, it was an incredible piece of oral art. And when Darkness came out, the aesthetic was completely different. And I was really impressed with it. I actually, at the time, liked Darkness on the Edge of Town a lot more because I was into punk music. And I was listening to The Clash, and I was listening to the Ramones, and I was listening to all those types of bands. And that album had that kind of raw feel for it. And then I discovered years later that he was also into that kind of music. And he incorporated some of that raw aesthetic into his approach, really stripped down approach. And I really appreciated that. Ultimately, that album led me to pick up the guitar myself.
Wow.
And so I'm really grateful for that. And I started learning all of those songs. And over the years, I've learned many of his songs. And for a while, I was playing in coffee houses, just me and my acoustic guitar, and I was doing almost exclusively Bruce songs. I did other songs as well, but they were all in the same kind of vein as Bruce songs. I did some Johnny Mellencamp songs, I did some Bob Seger songs, I did some Johnny Cash songs. But inevitably, I would do my set. It was usually a 3-hour set. I would do a 3-hour acoustic set. And at intermission or after the show, I would have people come up to me and ask me, "Oh my God, what song did you write that?" You know, it would be things like "Wreck on the Highway," which John is very familiar with, and "I Wish I Were Blind" I would do, and a lot of the more obscure songs that are deeper cuts for Bruce, and I would play those. And people would come up to me afterwards and like, "Oh my God, did you write that song?" And I would always say, "I wish I could take credit for it, but no, that's a Bruce Springsteen song." And literally you could see the jaws drop. They're like, "Oh my gosh, he writes like that?" Like, yeah, he does. And here's where you find the songs. And I felt really good about turning people on to what he had to say in his music. And I know a lot of people went away and they probably immediately went out and got his CDs and all of that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed doing that kind of music because it resonated with me, but it also made an impression on the people who were listening.
Yeah, I think a lot of, or at least there's a certain contingent of Bruce fans they know the big songs, you know, they know
Right.
the anthems, they know Born to Run, they know Badlands, they know Born in the USA. And then, you know, you pull out these album cuts and they're going, "That's Bruce?" Like, that's a whole other vibe going on. That's not, you know, rowdy rock and roll E Street. That's, CJ mentioned Wreck on the Highway, which I used to use in my film classes as an example of a narrative for the screenwriting class, which he has plenty of those. He's very cinematic in his, because there's a beginning and middle and end, and it sets up this visual. You're on accident. There's a state trooper, and so on and so on. There's the poor girlfriend back at her home who doesn't realize her guy just got killed.
Right.
And so he has that, and he you know, he writes. He said a lot of it is writing third person, like it's not autobiographical. I'm not writing about that time I found that. He's imagining these characters, which is what you do as a screenwriter, and then filling out their story. So yeah, I do think when people who just know Bruce from the big hits,
They're missing out.
yeah, they're missing out. And if you can, like, introduce them to some of the ones that are a little bit quieter or a little bit more thoughtful or philosophical, I think, you know, then they're really like, "Wow, that's Bruce." You know?
You know, you can almost, I have somewhere in my den a book of his lyrics. And you can actually just sit down and just read it, and each song takes you to a different place. I did want to say something. My theme here is my geography, and how it's brought me into the aura of Bruce. Some years ago, I was doing a story on these small little restaurant chain called the Windmill. And that's hot dog. Bruce used to go to all the time, still does. Great hot dogs, and they're known for that. And I was doing a story on the Windmill. I think it was their 50th anniversary, blah blah. And I had interviewed the owners, and it was just about ready to go to press. It was for a magazine, and the owner called me, said, "Calvin, we have our first customer. Would you want to, before you go to press, do you want to just interview our very first customer?" Had nothing to do with Bruce. And I said, "Yeah, sure. You know, I'm a retired guy. I have all the time in the world. Sure." So I went down to their restaurant in Freehold, as a matter of fact, which is, you know, Bruce's hometown. And I'm interviewing this woman, an older woman, and we're talking, and somehow you're in Freehold, and somehow Springsteen comes up, and she says to me, "Oh, by the way, I rented Bruce the house on 7.5, I forget the street, in Long Branch for the summer, and that's where he wrote Born to Run." So
Wow.
this woman,
Small world, right?
yeah, what a small world. She rented him the house, and that's where and you know, when you do a Springsteen tour, which I've done through Monmouth University, they take you to that little house, and it's still there. It's just a little bungalow shack, and it really hasn't changed. It hasn't changed very much.
It was probably an upgrade from when he was living in a back room at the surfboard factory, though. So.
We lost John.
Oh no, John,
yeah,
come back.
maybe he'll come back. By the way, you said surfboard, and he's coming back. All right,
There
you're
he
back.
is.
You said surfboard, and I want to show you guys a picture I found. I interviewed for my TV show Bruce's first manager, Carl Tinker West, who had a surfboard factory, and Bruce used to hang out there. And I don't know if he, but anyway, that's Carl Tinker West right here, and that's my TV show, my co-host, and I interviewed him. But it was so funny. He said, "Yeah, I'll be interviewed. We can talk about surfboards, and the fact I came from California, and talk about a whole bunch of different things. I'm down at Jersey Shore, but do not ask me any questions about Bruce.
Oh, really?
I ain't
Wow.
gonna answer them." I said, "That's fine. I'm interviewing you because you're an interesting character."
Yeah.
And so I didn't. I have a question. I always like to ask this. The whole Clarence Clemens, in your opinions, that really helped to accelerate the aura when he joined the band and became the big man, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, he mentions that in his Springsteen on Broadway show, how big Clarence was to that sort of breakthrough moment for him. And he does a really nice tribute to him. He plays 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and which has the lyric, "When the big man joined the band," or whatever. And it's also, I was talking earlier about how he writes in third person. He doesn't know, this is my story, but I'm going to create a character and tell you that guy's story. And in his Springsteen on Broadway show, he mentioned that even the character everyone thinks is him, as the racing in the street, grease monkey, I love cars, the hood on, I'm driving with my beer, and so on. That was sort of created persona that he said when he wrote Racing in the Street, he didn't even have a driver's license.
Right.
That he was kind of channeling his dad, that his dad was the car guy, and the go out driving at night to get away from the family and stuff. And so I thought that was a real interesting sort of confessional moment that he leads the show off with. And anyway, so, but you asked the big man, I don't know, CJ, but I mean, he was obviously, his sound is key to their music in the middle period.
Yeah. So my daughter Blair, she actually picked up the alto sax because of Clarence.
Wow.
And started taking lessons and learning all of that because the sound is just so big. And there's a big difference between saxes, tenor saxes and alto saxes and things like that. The sound is completely different. And she wanted that really rich, deep sound. And when she started playing and started, listening to those songs and trying to recreate them, it was really impressive to hear that in my own house, and I could close my eyes and visualize that the big man was playing those kinds of things. But yeah, he was a wonderful foil for Bruce while he was still alive. And some of the stuff that he and Bruce created, like that solo from Jungle Land, I'll stop what I'm doing to listen to that if it ever comes on. And it's just a shame that it's not played more on classic rock stations or AOR stations, because it's too long. And that's a real tragedy, because that is literally the magnum opus of Bruce's catalog. And people should be exposed to that on an ongoing basis. That's my feeling.
Yeah. Reminds me of the last time I saw Bruce in concert, which would have been about 3 years ago in Detroit. And he's done this at other shows. I just had never seen it. And I was just kind of amazed in today's world that he still does this, which is he leaned back and fell into the crowd. They all grabbed him and held him.
Yeah.
Passed him around the main floor, all the way around. They're all in, pass it to them, and then back up to the stage. And I just thought, you can't imagine his bodyguards or his manager is happy about that. They're like, Bruce, you can't just fall into these random people that you don't know and let them just do this for 20 minutes and get you back to stage. But of course the fans loved it.
Right.
And it sort of showed, how much he trusts his fans and knows that they're it's all about the love and I don't know, it was very cool to see him.
Was it Axl Rose who did a crowd dive and they all separated and let him hit the ground? Can you imagine if Clarence did that? He'd crush people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Anyway,
Clarence.
I think somebody handed him a beer or two halfway out in the middle of
Yeah.
he chugged it. He didn't just take a sip, he chugged it, and then he threw the plastic cup into, and everyone, they roar, and you think, are you sure who that person is? And they didn't put, something in it, but anyway.
I saw Bruce do that at the Garden where he
So yeah, it was part of his shtick.
He just fell in to the audience, and it defines who he is, his working man, blue collar ethics, that he would trust the people who came to see him and falling into him. I mean, it's just who he is. It's funny. Well, you were talking about Clarence. Had he not got into a car accident and had a metal plate put into his head, he would have played professional football, and he might not have ever been a musician. I mean, he was a musician. So was his wife, Jackie. She was maybe even a better musician, his first wife.
Wow.
You talk about geography. A little anecdote: when Bruce and Jackie moved from Maryland, where they went to Maryland, University of Maryland, Eastern Shores, and they eventually moved to Jersey. They moved 2 traffic lights away from me. I wasn't here then, but that's where they moved. So I've been to the house on a number of occasions, that first family house where they lived. That's my contribution to this little chat, the geography.
Recently, I've been watching the Muse concert in Madison Square Garden, the No Nukes concert. But I remember when that came out, and I remember watching that footage, and then it went away for the longest time, and I would try to find bootlegs of it. I was trying to find ways to get a hold of that footage, and I could never find it. And finally it's out again, and it's fantastic. And I just remember the very first concert I went to see him, it was the River Tour. And it was very, very close in the time frame to the Muse concerts. And the energy level that he played, that he put together in those shows was absolutely unbelievable. And every time he does the shtick of where he pretends to pass out, and I'm 30 years old, I can't take this anymore, I'm going to have a heart attack, it still cracks me up every time. And he did that at the show that I initially saw. And I just laughed my ass off, even in the concert. It was just, there's just such a joyful juxtaposition of his party music and his good time music as compared to his serious social issue type music. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. As a filmmaker and as a writer and as a director of live theater, I always look for those juxtapositions. I always look for opportunities to fill in the blanks between the lines. You've got the written word, and then you've got the action, and then everything that happens in between is what brings those words to life, whether it's on stage, whether it's in film, or whether it's in music. And he was just really a master at being able to switch up the narrative of what he was doing and how he was doing it and engaging the crowd. And I was captivated by that at the time. And that has informed my kind of aesthetic in a big way ever since. And I've got a lot of other influences as well, obviously, as an artist. But when it comes to communicating with the people that you're trying to communicate with, your audience, and having them leaning forward instead of doing this and falling asleep, that is huge. And he was really, really good at that. What do you think, John?
I agree. I was just thinking again about the Springsteen on Broadway show, and like Cal was saying, that working class persona, even though he admits he created that somewhat. He's still sort of stayed true to that over the. He didn't become a. He's obviously a multi-millionaire. He could have all the houses and all the boats and whatever he wants.
Right.
But he still seems to have that relate to the common man appeal, and it's in his writing as well. Yeah, and I also noticed in that show he played some of the big anthem songs, but he just played them on his acoustic guitar. So no drums, no band, just him. And when you hear them in that version, you know, there's a lot more melancholy in those songs. You know, when they do the rock and roll thing, you feel like, yes, go, rock and roll never dies. You know, when you hear him just do it solo acoustic, you get into the lyrics more and you understand sort of the way he's weaving, you know, this story with sort of the, I don't know, the of the characters in a way. So it was kind of enlightening. So
I agree with that. There's a version of Born in the USA that's his acoustic version, and I believe he recorded that for the Nebraska album. And if you've heard the acoustic version of Born in the USA as compared to the live rock and roll version of it, there is a sense of impending doom and dread in that song that is really essential to the song. And I really, really wish that acoustic version was more widely available because it really captures the essence of what that song is about. When Born in the USA came out, that song, it took me a while to warm up to it. And, you know, because it's a 3-chord song, and the words are very interesting. And if you have the right mindset, you get the idea. But the acoustic version leaves no doubt as to what that song is all about.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I wish there was more like that, frankly.
It's kind of misleading.
Yeah.
Born in the USA until you really plunge into it. You know, on the surface, without even plunging, you know, it's not what you would expect it to be about.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they just don't understand. You know, they hear the big rousing chorus and they hear the big noise, and they're like, yeah, 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 and that's not what the song is.
Right.
So
totally. And I will be curious. Just, you know, here we are in 2022, and COVID killed so many tours, and Bruce is, I'm sure, has other things he can do to keep himself busy, make albums and so on. But, you know, and he's pushing, how old is Bruce? Like 78-ish?
No, I'm older than Bruce. So
I think he's 72.
probably
I think he's 10 years older.
I think he just celebrated his 75th birthday.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, you wonder, is he going to do one more E Street Band tour, which there's no reason he shouldn't. The Rolling Stones are out there, the Who is out there, and those guys are not getting any younger. So, but I was trying to figure out, you know, what's next for him. Will we see him?
I would think he'd do a farewell tour. I'm just guessing.
I think he put out that he was going to be on tour soon, which is great. I just had a memory pop up. I don't know if you guys remember when John Prine passed away due to COVID. And I made a post on Facebook about it, you know, that we lost John Prine. Bruce Springsteen, wear your mask. Because I mean, when that day comes, when Bruce is no longer with us, it's going to be a rough day for me.
Yeah.
Because even though I've never met the man, he's had a profound impact on my life through his art. And I think I'm one of millions.
Yeah, and I think I'm 65, so I'm of that age where, you know, you're starting to see that happen because people get old, you know, and you know, and I think of that not only with Bruce, but you know, the day Paul McCartney died, big thing, you know, and they're all pushing 80, you know, whatever. And you know, I'm a big Who fan. Pete Townsend still out there doing it. And sometimes my wife will kid me like, you're gonna go to the rock concert, you know? And I'm like, well, look at if Pete Townsend can get out there and do it, if Bruce can get out there and play for 3 hours, I can sit and listen for 3 hours. Okay, you know, if they can get out, put out and make
Correct.
Same thing, put out all that energy. Yes, I can sit in the stands and listen and applaud.
Absolutely.
No.
I wanted to bring something else up. You were talking about how Bruce has maintained a working man's persona, even though I think he just sold his catalog for $500 million.
Mhm.
And God bless him for that. He can take that money and start doing a lot of the altruistic things that are part of his essence, which is great. But the working class persona that he's put on, I find it really interesting when you put it through the lens of politics, how many people dislike him because of his politics. And not to talk about politics, which I don't want to do, but the fact is that he's pro-union, he's pro-worker, he's pro all of the things that really should appeal to blue-collar workers and more conservative type people. And for whatever reason, there is a certain faction in our population that really is averse to that. And I don't understand it. I don't think it's really difficult for me to look at that type of thing and understand why there is that kind of backlash. Like, for instance, I was on YouTube and I was looking at some of the commentary that comes up on some of the songs, and a lot of them relate to, I could never support that commie liberal whatever. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand that, because what his politics are pro-human, pro-decency, pro-ethics, pro-morality, pro-worker, pro-union.
The middle class, the regular Joe. That's who you are. Why would you? Neil Young has that same issue. He's like just this good.
Well, that's why he withdrew from Spotify, right? Neil Young. Just withdrew.
Man of the earth, just a guy, champion of the worker, and then they'll if he says anything political, they're like, I'm done. So that's the culture war we have going on right now.
It's a real shame, because people are missing out.
Correct.
If they looked at it, and it's not just Bruce. I mean, there's a lot of artists out there who have really good things to say and have an attitude and an ethic that people can really absorb and learn from. But being a Bruce fan, I look at those things very, very closely. Another one of the things that really bothers me is, he's got that song called 41 Shots, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. And it's about the killing of Amadou Diallo in the
New York,
and he was shot like 41 times.
Yes, 41 times.
41 times. I was in the military. I was a spec war guy. I'm a small arms expert. It really only takes one, honestly. And when the police force, or people who are aligned with the police, really rebelled against him because of that song, I found that also kind of distressing, because no matter who you are or where you are in the world or what you do for a living, you should be able to take a magnifying glass to what you do and be able to look at those things objectively. And if something is wrong, if you can't look at it objectively, you cannot fix it. You cannot go about changing culture. You cannot go about changing behavior if you're not willing to take a magnifying glass to your behavior. And that was also a real wake-up call for me, because my daughter at the time, she was dating an African-American kid. And I had to have some really tough talks with them and tell them, look, my daughter's white, you're black, everywhere you go, you are going to have laser focus on what you are doing. And if you do anything wrong, if you do one thing that is untoward, you're going to be judged, and you're going to be judged harshly by people who are in authority and things like that. And you have to realize the rules are different for you. My best friend at the time was a black guy, and his son, they lived in a gated community in Florida, and it was very insulated. He went to a school. It was in Weston, Florida, a very wealthy suburb of Fort Lauderdale, and he had it really easy there, and he was getting set to go off to college and go off into the world. And I pulled the kid aside and I said, you've had a life that is pretty insulated and pretty protected, and you're going to be going out into the world now. And the one thing I want you to realize is that for you too, the rules are going to be different. No matter how you slice it, there are going to be people out there who see you and fear you or hate you or both. And you have to be prepared for that. And you are going to have to figure out ways to get past that and make the situation work in your best interest. But you're at a severe disadvantage. So yeah, when I see those kind of comments, it's just like you're missing the point. You're missing what really needs to be looked at. And you're looking at surface type things, and you're being fed your opinion, you're being fed your attitudes by outside sources. And please be smarter than that.
I agree. Yeah,
We're not as a species. That's why I call my channel Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. I try to look at the species and you know, if you don't get it, you ain't never gonna get it. That's one of my little things. You'll never, if you're red, you ain't gonna be blue, and if you're blue, you ain't gonna be red. And the things that we see today, the political things we see, and I don't mess with politics either, but I'm a huge fan of Ken Burns.
Yes.
Obsessively. And I have a lot of his stuff here that I just watch. There must be something wrong with me. I've watched Ken Burns, An Intimate History of the Roosevelts. Probably, well, the pandemic was great because I had nothing to do. I'm stuck in the house. I must have watched it about 8 times, especially the chapters on Franklin and Eleanor. Theodore, you know, he's a great conservationist, but the stuff I learned and my takeaway from 7 or 8 times watching Franklin and Eleanor is and Franklin was one of the greatest politicians who ever lived. He was a master politician. He always knew when. He always let somebody show their cards or their hand, and then he would strike. And it was just brilliant. And I mean, he got us into the war when we were completely isolationist. But it was funny. His son Elliot, and this is what politics is all about. Why what went on in 1943, 1944 is still going on today. There's nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. But his son Elliot flew 300 combat missions.
Wow.
300. So at some point he was given a commendation and a promotion, deservedly so, 300. And the Republicans said that was favoritism.
Yeah. It blows my mind. There's definitely culture wars going on. And, you know, I think it's our job as responsible citizens of this country. We're all older, we're more established, hopefully a little bit more respected because of our experience and what we've done. But it really is our responsibility to get through to the people that we can get through to. You know, I'm involved in local type things, and I'm kind of shocked at some of the things that are directed toward me because I am progressive. I'm not necessarily sure that I would call myself completely liberal, but as a progressive, you get that label attached, for better or for worse. But I would certainly much rather have that label attached than being a red meat, far right, type person, because I feel like there's a lot more nuance and responsibility that come with that. So when you post this, please, viewers, please don't pillory me for this, but I literally want the best for people. I literally want the best for our country, and I literally want the best for the world. And that is where Bruce is writing from. And that is why I am so big of a fan of the man, because he does put his money where his mouth is, and he has a voice, he has an audience, and he has people who listen to him, and that's important. I only can imagine if any of the three of us had that kind of following and the ability to put the word out about what matters, and hopefully use that platform as an ability to reach the people who are truly reachable. And they are out there. The difficulty is in finding them.
Correct.
And with his platform, he's able to do so with his music, and he's become more of a social. Like I just saw the other day, he put out a PSA about Ukraine, and I thought it was great. You know, I would do the exact same thing if I were able to.
Hey, that's just a great place to,
Wrap it up.
yeah, do a wrap. Is that your terminology, guys?
Yes,
We're gonna do a wrap. Is it time? Are we done already? We just
Well,
started. Man.
listen, we could go for,
We could go for days. I know.
Yeah, we could go.
Let's do
for-
it again.
Well, let's do it again, because it's endless, the segues that we can go on to. So yes, let's do it again. Any final comments, CJ, John?
Sure. Again, my name is CJ Julianus. I'm a filmmaker. I have a film out on, it's everywhere right now. It's on Prime, Tubi, YouTube. You can watch it for free on all those channels. It's called Misadventures of Mistress Maneater. We're very proud of it. We're averaging 4.5 stars out of 5 on all those platforms. Great reviews. So please watch it. Please keep carrying the torch for Bruce and his music, especially the music that is more that appeals more to the deeper soul of all of us, and continue turning people on to that type of thing.
Great, thank you, CJ. John?
I will include the links to my films. I'll send them to you, and you can
Please.
include them in this whatever the link is to this particular podcast. But yeah, I'm just, I find music is a great pathway to human understanding, and I think Bruce, obviously his work shows that. You were mentioning Ken Burns, and I recently rewatched the Jazz series by him. It was made 20 years ago, and I realized not only is it full of just great music, but it's basically the history of racism in America
Sure.
at the same time, and stuff that I did not know. I mean, I knew a little bit of, but it's being brought to you in a way that's palatable. No one's trying to shove it down your throat. We're going to talk about music and the history of jazz in America, and all the greats, Louis Armstrong and so on. But at this, weaving in some important social facts, and I think Bruce has that ability. They're beautiful songs, they're beautiful melodies,
Correct.
they're evocative, and yet, they have something to say. So anyway.
They do, and that's the mark of good art, right? When you are able to say things and leave them open-ended and let your listener come to their own conclusions about what you're trying to say, that's what the best art is. And a lot of his songs do that, which I continue to appreciate and continue to utilize as an artist myself.
Yeah,
Well, thanks, Cal. Appreciate.
yeah. Better Days, which I love, by the way. Great song. I love that. So Better Days, thank you guys. To be continued. I'm gonna stop recording. Don't disappear yet. I just want to do a final wrap with you, but I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me on a Saturday in April.
Yeah, after I'm done with you, I get to go do my taxes.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Thanks, guys.